the guy who, there was him and there's another guy called Khabib who was in the room with me. He then took me like under his wing type of thing for the next month, particularly through Ramadan. And, you know, fortunately in those days, I mean, Ramadan was in January, so it's
small fast,
very small fast. Because if it had been in August, then it's good. But yeah, so I kept the fast right off the bat, which is not necessarily what you need to do, but I did it. It was quite simple. And then from there, I sort of like, because obviously school was still going on, it was very difficult to balance the two. Very difficult to balance the two, because obviously the Salah was so close together. Obviously in the first couple of weeks I'm just learning, so it didn't really matter, but then once I'd got it under my belt, what I'm supposed to do, when I'm supposed to do it, because Dawah and Asr are so close together during school time, it was very difficult. I had to, obviously there was only one other Muslim in the school, which I didn't know before, but he was in year 7, so the waste of time. So it was just me really. So I remember I used to take my coat and go into the sports hall at dinner time and do Dawah. And fortunately, because I was in the 6th form, I had a lot of free time where you could catch it. I could sometimes even catch the bus to the masjid and pray. But that balance was quite difficult in the beginning.
So would you say you became Muslim and you went straight into like praying 5 times a day?
Yeah, absolutely. Because when I became a Muslim, I stayed in the masjid all day and learnt the Salah. So even Fajr was easy. I used to pray Fajr because it was like 7 o'clock or something, so everything was quite easy. So I used to pray Fajr and then go to school, pray Dawah in school, pray Asr, sometimes in school, sometimes I used to just as it finished, and then go straight to the masjid for Maghrib. And I used to stay in Ramadan. The guy Khatib used to take me to his home, and what we used to do is we'd eat, then his son, who's now an alim or a mufti or something, but his son, who was he must have been about 14 at the time, used to go through the prayer with me, what to say, what to recite, blah blah blah, until Isha. Then we used to come and pray Isha, Tarawih, and then I'd go home.
So this was like a boot camp first month of
Yeah, to be fair, I went into it with both feet, but and I used to come home, and then as the months went on, I mean, my mum we used to every time I'd come in, or every time I saw my mum, she used to say, "Are you coming in or are you going out?" Because I was in and out all day,
for the masjid. You mean?
For the masjid, so she never knew. You'd come in and then you're only in for half an hour, then you have, because I used to live about a mile away from the masjid. I used to walk it, so it took 15-20 minutes to get there. So sometimes it were worth just staying in the masjid, particularly in the winter time when it's close. You just stay in the masjid because there's no point in going home. In the summertime, you'll come home after an hour, you're going back again. So she never used to know if I'm in or out, but that's just the way. That's the way I adopted Islam. That's the way I got told. This is the way it's supposed to be, and that's the way I'm going to do it. Now, the important thing is, that's how and it was easy for me. That's the difference. It was easy for me because I didn't have many other things going on. So it was easy for me to just keep going to the masjid. Plus the fact that really, this wasn't something that I didn't have any problem with it. Like some people, they have second thoughts and they have discomforts. I didn't have that. I felt in my heart that this is the correct thing to do. Now, whether or not I was naive, because my dad said to me, "Oh, this is just a phase," and I remember going back to him after about 4 or 5 years, and he still said, "You're in a phase." I mean, it's been 23 years now, so
you're still in the phase.
you know, I think it's a bit. I think that phase is gone. But the point is, when I accepted Islam, and I accepted Islam on a feeling that it's the right thing to do. I remember after accepting Islam, or no, the first day when I first went in to do it, and the Imam said, "Come back tomorrow." When I walked out, I remembered a line from the Malcolm X film, which said, this guy walks into a coffee shop and says to Malcolm X, "I want to join your organisation, I want to become a Muslim." And he says, "Do you know what we're about?" And he said, "No." He says, "Well, you should never join an organisation unless you know what it's about." So I left that mosque that day thinking, I need to do some research on this thing. So I went straight to the library and started reading about Islam and things like that. Because really, I didn't know what I was getting myself into. I don't think you ever know what you're ever going to get into, but it's good to have some base knowledge, to be fair. I know that people like in these days, because like back then, there was no Muslims you could talk to. I mean, there were, but I didn't know any Muslims. I actually did know a Muslim. People go from being a Muslim to being a non-Muslim, and then all this ex-Muslim business, because somewhere along the line they've opened up a part of their consciousness and realised, I don't agree with this. But have they researched it as good as they should have done?
But you've, and I think I've spoken to you in the past, you've helped other new Muslims, and you've probably experienced the ex-Muslims as well, haven't you?
Yeah, so I've never personally met somebody who was a Muslim who gave up Islam. I've never personally met that, but I have met people who have either just come into the deen, or somebody, and then there's one particular person who came to me wanting to become a Muslim. I knew it weren't authentic, but I helped him anyway. He was having trouble at home, and this is one of the things they look for, an escape. And to be fair, he was in it for quite a long time, but then he moved back, and we lost contact after a while, and I'm not quite sure where he is or what's happened to him. That was a long time ago. But there's been plenty of people who've come into the deen under different backgrounds, different circumstances, all sorts of different things, and they've gone on their own journey. And what I would say when it comes to the thing about coming from a non-Muslim background into a Muslim or an Islamic environment is that we carry baggage with us when we come across. So things have happened in the past. We are who we are. We carry that.
So you're saying non-Muslims, or you mean like Revert have their own baggage?
Every single one of them has their own baggage.
Because you often get a lot of like Muslim brothers saying, "Oh, I want to marry a Revert because they don't come with no baggage."
Yeah, but they do, because we see there's two things about it, and I'm going to get into it here now. You've opened that door now. When you become a Muslim, I made the mistake. Well, I didn't make the mistake because I wouldn't have known any better. The Muslims make a mistake by trying to turn them generally into a Pakistani or an Arab, because that's the dominant thing.
Like the two born Muslims in this room right now.
Yeah, absolutely. But when the first thing you do is put a topi on the head, and give them a Muslim name, when really you should leave all that. That's not important. The important thing is the testification of your faith and what that actually means, not how the person looks. So I think one of the problems, certainly back in the day, I don't know if it's probably changed now slightly, but I still think it's dominant, that this person has literally just come through a life-changing door where there's a lot of things and they're completely vulnerable. completely. I am at the mercy of you. If you're the first person that I meet, I'm at the mercy of you, because everything you say, I'm going to take as gospel. Because you're a Muslim and I've just become a Muslim. So, you know, anything you say, I'm going to believe, because I've got nothing to go against. So I've just got to go for your word. Now, if you tell me that I must change my name, that I don't know, whatever, I must wear certain clothes or whatever. If I've come from a different type of background that doesn't really go with that, I think when I became a Muslim, I was easygoing. I was happy to go with anything. Later on, I learned, actually, I don't want this. It's not. That's not what Islam is. But that's a different story. There's some Muslims that people who've come into the deen, and there was that. I think it was a few months ago, or maybe last year. Was it a rugby player?
Sonny Bill Williams.
Yeah, he's Australia.
Yeah, New Zealand player.
New Zealand. Yeah. People were bashing him because he had tattoos. Now, you know, they're saying, "Oh, tattoos are haram. Why you should wearing tattoos?" This guy's come from a different thing. You know, you're bashing him because of some previous thing, which, you know, none of it's a problem anyway. But how is he supposed to feel if he just comes into Islam and Muslims, who he's supposed to be a part of the brotherhood, and you know, criticising him? And it's that sort of misunderstanding, or I don't really know how to put it, that Muslims have, that all of a sudden you've got to turn somebody into what you are, and that's not what Islam ever brought. A person can stay how he is in terms of culture, language. You know, that there are certain things that you can't do. So you couldn't just carry on drinking if you want to carry on drinking, because Islam forbids. But you would know that Islam forbids alcohol, gambling, and things like that. That's fine. But from a very shallow level, they will try and turn that person into something else that they're not. And a lot of people are very uncomfortable with that. And I don't think it's even necessary. Well, I know it's not necessary. So, what I think we need to learn, especially people in today's world, is to be a little bit more respectful of other people's cultures. Because people are willing to accept other people how they are. I mean, when I became a Muslim, and I went to school, and I started telling people slowly, told my friends, most of whom had an inkling the way I was acting before, but you know, so I went into that.
And you're praying, and like, what are you doing?
And then, no, I told them before. They never saw me pray. They very rarely saw me pray. And then I remember one day, because I used to be the coach of the Year 7 football team, and my form teacher, Mr. Smith, Phil Smith, his birthday was yesterday. Happy birthday!
Happy birthday, Phil.
I remember he.
How do you know his birthday?
I'll tell you why. Because in one of the classes, he handed out his CV, and he had his date of birth on it. And when I look at things, I just remember them. So.
It's not like your best friend still.
No.
You just remember the date of birth.
I've not seen him for 25 years or something. But and the reason why I remembered the birthday is because he was born on the same day as Ian Wright.
That's even more random.
Just another birthday that I know. When I read things, there's things that just stick into my head, so I just know. So anyway,
happy birthday, Ian.
So he, I remember he ran to me when he found out that I'd become a Muslim, the coaches were just getting ready because we were taking he was year 8 coach, I was year 7 coach, but we used to travel together to the away games, the other schools.
So this is in 6th form still?
This is in the 6th form, yeah. And this is just after I became a Muslim. And he ran over to me with a big smile on his face, saying, "Oh, I've heard that you've just become a Muslim." And I said, "Yeah, I'm just, you know." He was just really happy. And it was surprising to me. It was surprising to me, and it was encouraging as well that somebody can, you know, because what did it matter to him? But he showed that like appreciation, and it that meant a lot. And so he was, you know.
I'm sure the fact that he showed you appreciation as a non-Muslim.
Well, this is what I'm saying, you know, like, because, like I said before, I did not know Islam existed. Never mind anything else, I didn't know it existed. But that all of a sudden, my mum knew about it, my teachers know about it. In my world, it was very strange. Now, I don't think two things about it, because everybody, you know, in my world, everyone knows about it now, and I'm shocked when I meet somebody who doesn't know about Islam. But back then, you know, we had no reason I had no reason to think that anybody would know about Islam at all. So obviously a lot of my friends didn't know, because we were all in the same group, so they didn't know just as much as I didn't know. But to see somebody else who, you know, and he may not have known a lot, you know, it may just be an appreciation that someone's actually done something different in life rather than, you know, who knows. But the point is that doesn't matter. He came across and rather than people say, "Well, that's a bit weird, what have you done that for?" Not one person said that. Not one person. They all said, "Oh, that's, you know, interesting." Not necessarily, "Oh, that's a good thing," or great.
You mentioned your teacher was really impressed. But what were your parents like? You didn't actually. You said your.
Okay, so my mum, like I said, my mum, you know, was supportive. She said to me, "Whatever you want to do, it's your decision." That, you know, what you know, whether or not, cause she's not really religious, so when being brought up, she always said, "Look, anything you want to do, that's your decision. You can do it." And obviously she'll support and she's always been like that, and it's great, because that's the way. I think it's important to know that you've got somebody like that. My father, in a way, this is good. He disapproved of me becoming a Muslim, but didn't show that disapproval. So he openly said, "I don't think you should become," well, he didn't say, "I don't think you should become," but he said, "I don't think you should have become a Muslim." And he said that he doesn't agree with Islam and all this sort of stuff. But he never stopped me, and he never ever made a big criticism of anything like that. That's what I wanted to do, and he allowed me to do that.
So your parents now, I don't know, they're still alive?
Yeah, my parents are still alive, and you know, and really well. See, with my father, I've always had a great admiration for my father, because he very fit and strong, very fit and strong. He's in his 70s, but he's very fit and strong. And when he was younger, I remember my friends coming to me, because he's a physiotherapist. He was a physiotherapist. I think he's semi-retired now, or maybe even fully retired. And he used to go into pubs and drink orange juice.
Okay.
And sometimes my friends would, because you know, back then you used to take your kids and stuff like that. And my friends used to tell me at school, "Oh, I saw your dad the other day, he was just drinking orange juice." I used to get really happy about that, because he's not the same as everybody else. He was a lot healthier and fitter and all that sort of stuff. So I had a lot of respect and admiration. I might not have always shown it, but I certainly had it.
If your dad's watching.
Yeah, so if he ever gets to see this, I do appreciate you.
And mashallah, for the audience, you're saying your dad is very strong and fit, but you're, in terms of as a human being, very fit and healthy as well.
Was. I don't know now.
In terms of
struggle getting up the stairs.
No, but in terms of, I've seen you play football. and in this area, you're probably the best.
Was.
Not
anymore.
I know you. And what about your? I know you talked about. You don't really. We were talked before. You said you didn't really want to talk about football because it's not really your thing. But
the thing about it is,
because didn't your brother play?
He did.
Professional.
He played for Halifax Town, but only for like a season or so. He's about 9 years older than me, and I made the mistake when I became a Muslim. This is a mistake I did make. When I became a Muslim, I was still playing in the same team as him, semi-professional, and I was just breaking in. So I'd been there since I was 13. I was one of the youngest ever players to play, if not the youngest, to play in a semi-professional men's team. I was only 13, but because my dad was the manager, so I got in. And then started training with them, and then managed to get a game when I was like 14 or something like that. So it was really good, and I was on a good road into the first team. And then when I became a Muslim, I gave it up. Now it's not necessarily because of Islam that I gave it up. I think it was my own hurdles in life. Why I gave it up, but I used Islam as an excuse because I wanted to concentrate on the deen, and I didn't really want to. There's a lot of things in football that you would experience that aren't conducive with an Islamic life, and so I made the decision not to get into it. Possibly that was a mistake. I don't know, but yeah, afterwards he went into Halifax Town, and then he played for a few other clubs as well, but that was the highest.
Do you think, like, for example, yourself, like, I've seen you play, and obviously I'm not like a scout or anything, but do you think sometimes we as Muslims or reverts sometimes make rash decisions that they'll do things that maybe they'll later regret, or even a Muslim at times?
I think because of the time. So if it was now, if I had become a Muslim now, then I would have carried on, because when you've got to imagine that was back in the late 90s. Now, back then there was nothing to refer to. There were no Premier League. Well, there were no Premier League. Premier League had just started a couple of years in, but there were no Premier League Muslim footballers. There were nothing to refer to, so there were no great stars or celebrities that were Muslim. Like these days, you can flick YouTube on and you know all these people are Muslim and whatever. There was none of that. So you thought that it's wrong to do all that because it's not what Islam says you can do. And don't get me wrong, there's a lot of things involved in the professional life that you shouldn't be getting into. Even if you're not partaking in it, you shouldn't be in the vicinity of it, and that is just something that people have to. People overlook it. That because they're famous, they overlook it. So all the Muslim stars of the world, they're all in environments that they shouldn't be in. But it gets or they're doing something that they shouldn't do. That is Islamically, So I can say something really controversial now.
I think I know what you're going to say it, to be honest, but let's go for it. Let's make it controversial.
Well. There are some scholars. I mean, obviously, there's a big. Football's one thing, and mainly the thing about football is in the changing rooms, and it's off the pitch. On the pitch, it's just a game of football. Whatever. But things like MMA and boxing are something completely different. So obviously everyone's like
with Khabib,
they're like, just because he's a Muslim, and he's a very good Muslim from what we can see. But should he be should he have been partaking in that sport in such how it is? And that's something where a lot of scholars have gone up and down whether or not.
Because he comes across as such a good Muslim at times. So,
well, it gets completely overlooked.
Yeah.
It gets completely overlooked. And the discussion's been had for years.
Yeah.
There's a lot of scholars who have condemned MMA, and there's a lot of scholars who just wave it away. Some scholars condemn football, some just wave it away. But the point is, these days, it gets generally accepted across the board. Back then, it didn't. So,
I don't know if you've seen a podcast. It's another podcast. I'm just promoting other people now. There's a podcast with I think it's a brother called Mohammed Hijab. I don't know if you know him.
Yes, I know.
And there was a guy called Faris Zahabi.
Okay.
So Faris Zahabi is a GSP. I don't know if you know GSP. He's another very famous MMA fighter who's just retired.
Yeah.
And I think Case, who's hiding behind the camera, could help me out here. But I think they asked a question to Faris Zahabi as well about, do you think MMA is haram or... Do you remember Case?
Yeah, he said he's into it to understand and develop ways of self-defense and what works and what doesn't work.
Yeah,
so hopefully it's educational. That's the way he sees it.
Which
but he's not a scholar though. He's
no, but in that respect, he's okay. And I always say the training, because if you're going to go back in the day, they used to train in all this sort of stuff, and it's actually really, really good. The actual fight with the rules are dodgy. So when you're pounding someone's face in, at that point, does it become... Now, what you could argue is, well, it's fair game, everybody knows the stakes. So, there is a hadith which states that you shouldn't punch the face, but then the stipulations to that, it's in certain circumstances. But, it's just on and on and on. The difference of opinion and all these different things. But the point I'm making is that back in the day, we didn't have all that sort of conversation going on. You have it now because it's so, it's so wide, and it's Muslims are. But back then, even though the Muslims are sort of like, they were still partaking in all these things, but it just wasn't as widely.
It's more like it's because there's like obviously we're from Sheffield as well, and the big fighter in Sheffield used to be Naseem Hamid.
Yeah.
So we're being brought up with Muslim fighters in a way now.
See, there, again, I met him when I was like 12 or 13. Didn't have a clue that he was a Muslim.
Oh really? But he did used to in his fights like.
Yeah, but I mean, I didn't used to watch his fights.
Okay.
I didn't. My dad took me to see him once. He came to do an exhibition, so we went to see him, and so I knew who he was and I knew what he did. But I didn't know he was a Muslim. I was just a kid, so what would I know? But
I think his mother passed away. It was Janada that much so Naseem Hamid like Inna Lillahi. So we're going to slightly move on now to I got a signal from the cameraman going wedding.
Oh. Right, okay.
I think it's getting too controversial.
Wedding.
Because for the audience, like we were talking about your parents, because you've completely not changed, but you've gone down the Muslim route in terms of you've got married to a Muslim woman. Not even from this country.
No, exactly. I went down the rabbit hole into I went to Bangladesh and I got married to a Bengali. How it came about is not really important. I knew people from, obviously this area is full of Bengalis, so I knew people from Bangladesh, and I used to, we went to Bangladesh, and I used to live with somebody who was Bengali, and we all went to Bangladesh, and it was because of my wife's cousin, who I met first, and we became friends or whatever, and he said, I know it, my cousin is, so that was that really. We went to the. I just got a good vibe from it all. So it's a nice country anyway. I liked it. I was there for quite a few weeks.
Just like you went to the village area.
Yeah, it was in the village. So it's my style because I hate the city and I hate this hustle and bustle of life. I hate it all, even though I'm part of it. I don't like it. I prefer out I'm very big on simple life. I don't have a simple life, but I do prefer it. So when I go to Bangladesh and there's hardly any electricity and everything's like there's no back then there was no technology, anything. People used to get excited. People used to sing along to adverts. But in the 60s. In the 60s they used to sing along to the adverts because TV was new and
the English adverts or the Bengali adverts?
No, English.
Okay.
The English people. Well, the 60s in Bengalis. They didn't have. But advertising was massive, especially in America, and they used to sing along to the adverts, and so it became a multi-million-pound industry just making advertising jingles. So when I went to Bangladesh and it was 2003, I went when I first went. You used to sit they didn't have them in homes. They just had it in like a, what do you call them?
What? I don't know.
Like a cafe, I suppose.
Okay.
Like a cafe, but you used to have a TV in the corner. When an advert came on, they used to sing along to it, and I found that quite amusing.
Like the snooker club. You used to have a lot of snooker clubs in those days, don't you? No,
a snooker club.
I'm thinking Pakistani.
Bangladesh is about 10 years behind Pakistan. No, it was just like serving tea and things like that. But and they used to just sing along to it. Anyway, I digress. So yeah, I liked the simple life of it all and things like that. So when I went to, I met her uncle first, and then her father. And the thing about it is they could all speak English, which is quite unique in a village. To be honest, it's quite unique. But they all, to be honest, like her uncle lived in Italy, and there was quite a few people who lived in Europe and stuff like that, and they just happened to be there at the time. So it was a lot easier. But it was quite good to see quite an educated village. They really did. So I spoke to the uncle, spoke to the father. Got a really good vibe from it all, to be honest. And then we went across to meet my wife and talk to her and all that sort of stuff. And we got a good vibe from it. So we spoke for quite a while before we decided that it's right to get.
So what was the sort of was there excitement in the village because this outsiders come?
Yeah, well, So it's a bit like, it's a bit like a celebrity going into the. It is. Everybody's sharing it. You can't get away from it. In fact, I don't know if you know Wahid from Totley, Wayne. He's a 6'3" white guy who came to Bangladesh with us.
Was he like a friend of yours?
They could not take their eyes off him. They could not take them because they'd never seen anyone like that. I mean, they'd never seen anyone like me before, but forget him. And he was quite uncomfortable with it, to be honest with you. But and he was only young at the time as well. But the point is, they stare at you. In fact, they look at everything you do. They'll watch you eat. They watch you get change. It was crazy. It was absolutely crazy. But yeah, it was a good. You get a good feeling. I think what won it over is the fact that every day. Not at that time. I went again a couple of years later. Actually, quite a while later, 2007. So we got married because I didn't spend that. Once we got married, I was only there for another week or so, and then I had to come back. So obviously, I came back. She stayed there, and then the communication was difficult. Then we didn't have smartphones back then. It was writing letters. We used to write letters to each other.
Proper romantic.
And yeah, I've still got some of the letters actually, but with telephone, because you used to use telephone cards.
Yeah.
And
You have to wait by the
but it was
phone.
really difficult because obviously she couldn't speak English at the time, or very broken. So it was very difficult and awkward. But alhamdulillah, it worked out. After that, it took almost a year to get her into this country, and then she came across, and you know, obviously they were just settled and tried to integrate her into this society, which she had no problem doing, to be honest with you. And it was good. And then we went back again in 2007, 2009, and that was good. That because then I could actually be part of the village, whereas before it was chaos.
You're all like the celebrity who come in.
Yeah, but the good thing about it is that 5 o'clock every day they used to play football.
Okay.
And that made that football's an international thing. If you
Were there any star players over there?
It's Bangladesh. But you play. The good thing about you play barefoot and it's absolutely fantastic. There's nothing like it. There's nothing like playing barefoot. I thought I'd hate it, but I loved it. So yeah, no, the marriage part of it was it was really good. The actual occasion was good and simple. So one of my big bugbears in this culture, and I'm calling it a culture, are the weddings. The extortionate amount of money that we spend on weddings. A lot of people go into debt because of the weddings and all that sort of thing. I got married and they tried to do the same to me. I remember having the conversation with a certain person and him saying, "Oh, you need to spend at least X amount of money before, thousands, otherwise it won't be accepted." I said, well, I don't have thousands, accepted as in the community. And I said, I don't have thousands, and I didn't, I'm extremely poor, and he says, "Oh, okay." Eventually, I spent what I had, and it was a few £100. That's all I had, and that's all I spent. And the wedding went on, and it was fine, and everything was good. And that's all there is to it. Now, whether or not people wanted this grandiose thing to show off, I don't know, and I don't care. A wedding is not about what people can see. It's about the two people who are actually getting married, and at the end of the day, it's those two people who are going to be spending the rest of their life together, and they should not be overburdened with borrowing money or the stress of all these extra things that they don't need, but having to get them just because their culture says they have to get them. Not the religion, the culture says that they have to do it. So, and that's another thing where I feel blessed of coming from the outside, because I wasn't attached to that culture, and therefore I could do it my own way. Whereas you, for example, or my man over there, if some of not everyone, they're attached to that culture that's gone back 1,000 years, and they have to do things in a certain way that probably in their heads they may not make any sense to them, but they still have to do it just to make parents, grandparents, great-grandparents who've been dead for 20 years make them happy. So I just think what we've done is taken a beautiful religion and we've turned it into something else, and the beauty of the religion has been buried, and all we're left now is with these extras that don't actually mean anything. And the thing about the deen is, I'm moving on from marriage. Can you see what I'm doing?
Yeah, I know you think. But like you mentioned about the beauty of the religion now. Like if you were to give a message, obviously because of current what's happening in society, etc. If you were to give a message about Islam for any non-Muslims out there or people who are interested in Islam, what message would you give to them?
Okay, so I mean, it's really interesting how and why people become Muslim in the first place, and also talking about a message. You know, I think it's important that a person. There's a guy who's a YouTuber. His name is, I think his name is Jay Palfrey.
Yeah, I think so. The Revert brother.
Yeah, he became a Muslim recently, but was studying Islam for like a year or something before he became a Muslim, and he was very. He wanted everything straight in his head before he did it, which is a good way of doing it, to be fair. He didn't want to jump in, he wanted to make sure. He's obviously a very methodical person, got a lot of respect for people who are like that. And you think to yourself, you know, what is it that brings a person into something? So there's that, you know, Abdullah Quilliam. There's a guy.
You mean? Actually, I'm not even going to say.
Okay, well, there's a guy called Abdullah Quilliam, and he became a Muslim.
The first Muslim of this country.
A bit of a claim, but yeah, okay. we can say. I'll tell you what, the first
redeem myself.
Quilliam.
We'll call him the first convert in this religion. I mean, we don't know, because who will ever know? You know, Usain Bolt's the fastest man on earth, but is he? I bet there's somebody else on earth who's faster. So, so he became Muslim in like, I don't know, 1877 or something like that. Now, and he did it because he was in Morocco, and he's obviously seen something there which has triggered something for him, and he's accepted that deen, culture, whatever, and these are very well off people. He was a solicitor or something. He was very wealthy, and he came from a wealthy family. It's not like, because a lot of people are like, oh well, it's poor deadbeats that change the religion because they've got nowhere else to go. No, he was a very, very wealthy person, and he came and he opened up I'm off. I will get back to the question you actually asked me. And he came, you know, and opened up a masjid in Liverpool, of all places. There was Muslims in Liverpool, and he started spreading the word. Now, some people say that because of him, he even set up, now check this out, obviously back then there was extreme poverty. It's a bit like now, but even poor people aren't that poor. They're just in debt, whereas before it was extreme poverty, but other people were extremely rich. Those people who couldn't look after their own children would give their children. He opened up like a centre for people to give their children to him because they couldn't do it. They couldn't afford it and stuff like that. But he could. He got given money from the Middle East as well for all this sort of stuff. Don't forget, we're still in the Ottoman Empire at this point. Okay. So. He knew, he'd met all these people, and that's I don't know the leader at the time, the Khalifa. I think it was Abdul Hamid II or something like that, who actually dubbed him Sheikh al-Islam of Britain, which is quite a title. But the point is, he opened up like a nursery or like a place for people to give their children, non-Muslims, give their children to him, so that on the condition that they're happy for them to be brought up as Muslims. Now, that's in the 19th century in Liverpool. Non-Muslims say, I mean, most of it will probably because of desperation, but the point is that it's amazing how, and he came out with a few publications, and this is another thing that we, you know, miss out on, I think. I'm sure it's happening elsewhere in Britain, but he had two publications. One of them, called The Crescent, which I've read. Every week he used to come out. He was unapologetically Muslim, and he used to write. Some of the stuff that he used to write in there was awesome, and he used to say, "Look, this is who we are, and just deal with it," you know, basically. But there was a lot of intrigue into Islam. Now, obviously, don't forget this is a time where there was a lot of dealings between the UK and the Middle East, India, Pakistan. Britain owned half of it, so there was a lot of interaction, a lot of crossover. So it's not like nobody knew about Islam. You know, it was very well. There was a lot of interaction, but there was a lot of resentment, of course. People didn't like that culture. I mean, he had trouble himself, and he, you know, as soon as he left, because he established the first masjid, which is still there. You can actually still go. You can still go there. You can still pray there. I think they're looking to restore it all. I think they're looking for. I think there's a foundation that took it over. I'm not quite sure, but I think they're looking for donations to restore it. I don't know if they ever, how far they got ahead with it. But the masjid is still there. You can still visit it. I just find it really interesting that at that time, how he used to speak, and some people say that up to just because of him, 500 or 600 people became Muslims. Wow. And we're not talking run-of-the-mill people. We're talking people of prestige. We're talking people middle class, even including. And I saw the story of some descendant of a guy called Robert Stanley. I'm sure his name was Robert Stanley, and he was the mayor of Stalybridge for a period of time, and then afterwards, and he became a Muslim and became good friends with this Abdullah Quilliam. So these were well-to-do middle-class people. But the point I'm making and why it triggered when you asked that question is that this deen is open to everyone of all different kinds and levels. And what you find is there's a lot of people who